so much. Oh, we missed that. Thanks. So, Chris, anything you want to say before we get started, or do you just want me to dive in?
Yeah, why don't you dive in and then I'll provide some intro remarks
Okay.
when I start my slides.
Okay. Thanks so much. So we'll call the meeting to order, and our first piece of business is to review the meeting minutes and make any comments or changes that you think are appropriate, and then have a motion to uh, adopt. Anybody have any questions, first of all, about the minutes? Any concerns? Hearing none, maybe I could ask for a motion to adopt as presented.
Moved. Mary Lang.
Thanks so much, Mary. And seconded by Director Cole Hamilton. Chair Cole Hamilton. Sorry. Thanks. Any discussion? Maybe if I could just ask anybody who is in opposition to raise their hand. Chair Cole Hamilton, your hand's still up. I assume you don't want you don't want to dissent. Um, we'll then accept those as adopted as presented. Thanks so much. And then I'll just turn it over to Chris.
Great. Thank you, Allison. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for calling into this 15th meeting of the Technical and Public Advisory Committee and hopefully our second to last one before submittal of the plan. So we were expecting this to be a relatively brief meeting. We've scheduled it for an hour. Not sure if it'll take that, but yeah, definitely hoping for this to be a conversation. So we do have a presentation, but I plan to pause throughout and just provide an opportunity for people to have any questions or make any comments. So just put your hand up, and we'll get to it. So as you'll see from the slides, we have there's a lot going on in this last kind of phase of the planning process, and we've got an aggressive schedule over the coming several months to ensure that we can get the plan submitted on time this summer as scheduled. Yeah, so without further ado, we'll just jump into it. So we've hit agenda item 1. So then we'll provide an overview of the site master plan and the cost per connection impact. So that's the new piece. And then provide an overview, a very high level overview of basically an outline of the draft plan, which is still being drafted by our team at WSP. And actually, Mike DeSilitz was planning to be here today to provide that update himself, but he's had a flight been delayed, so we'll just provide that for him. And then we'll just touch on some next steps and specifically the contact points with the Technical and Public Advisory Committee. So just an overview of the bit of a reminder and a look forward at the key pieces that. So the top ones there, bracketed in green, are the ones that we've presented recently. So being the outfall planning component, our work towards source control planning, the site master plan itself, and the total project cost estimate, which was presented in November, as well as the resource recovery recommendations. So we won't be providing any more information on that today. That was covered at recent meetings. Today we'll be talking specifically zeroing in on the estimated cost impacts to users. So how does that $113 million project translate to cost impact to the residents in our service area? And then we'll just provide just looking forward to that next and final meeting, just highlighting that we'll be talking about the environmental impact study, our proposed I&I commitments that will be embedded in the plan, and then talk about a plan monitoring committee, which is a requirement of the province. So once the plan is submitted, and then it is approved, it transitions to implementation, and then there's some remaining role potentially for members of this group on a committee that will help that will meet on a regular basis and review commitments and progress towards meeting commitments. So yeah, we'll touch on those on a later slide. Any questions about those items before we proceed? Okay, so I'll pass you over to Zoe to provide just a high-level summary of the site master plan. It was presented in more detail last year, but it's worth a refresher here before we look at those costs.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Yes, very high-level slides from me today. There's just two of them, so if there are any detailed questions you'd like to ask, feel free to stop and raise your hand, and we can stop and talk about some of the details. So just at a high level, we talked about this in greater detail in November, but the objectives of the site master plan were many. The first being revising the service population projections and the design criteria. So looking at, what are the projected flows and loads at the plant over the next coming 50 years? Then the next piece was, using those updated population projections and criteria was developing a cost-effective and resilient infrastructure strategy to accommodate growth into the future. So that was really looking at how can we maximize the use of our existing infrastructure and what can we do to really extend and optimize the process to limit the kind of, the cost impacts in that phase 4 upgrade. Also, as part of the site master plan, we just looked at generally what are the bottlenecks at the plant, and the plant was constructed in the 80s. So what is equipment that's reaching end of life and needs to be replaced due to condition or kind of at its end of life? We looked at and considered the cost and benefits of the couple of resource recovery options, ultimately landing on adding in the continued use of reclaimed water at the plant as part of the phase 4 upgrades. And then the site master plan outlines the timing of future upgrades based on the goals recommended by the liquid waste management plan, stage 1 and 2 report, and ensured we met the municipal wastewater regulation redundancy requirements. And finally, the piece we'll be talking a bit more about today, which was outlined in the site master plan, was the cost and scope of those future upgrades. Next slide, Chris. So just as a refresher, the phase 4 upgrade scope is shown on the screen here, and there's a lot of pieces to it. So this is the first phase of upgrades at the plant, looking to replace end-of-life equipment that's original from the 80s and also, planning into the future for capacity upgrades. So we have a new headworks facility, and this is kind of that top left box on the screen. This will be to replace our existing headworks that's at the plant that's in poor condition. We also have a retrofit to the existing administration building. We're currently at capacity for our existing staff, and as we continue to grow into the future, need to provide space for additional office workers and operations staff. Additionally, in that administration building retrofit is an upgrade to the electrical equipment at the plant. So most of the electrical at the plant is original from the 80s, and there's a number of kind of health and safety and code concerns. So as part of this upgrade, we'll be modifying that electrical room and bringing it up to current standards. On the capacity side, we'll be implementing chemically enhanced primary treatment, which is CEPT, and this allows us to increase the capacity of our existing primary clarifiers during wet weather flows without the need of building new expensive tankage as part of the phase 4 upgrades. In addition, we're going to be doing some upgrades and updates to the bioreactors, and this is kind of some process optimization that we've identified throughout the last 2 years working with our process expert and the team at Carollo that did the site master plan on some ways to improve the aeration in those bioreactors to eke out some more performance of the tanks we already have. Similar to that is the ML splitter chamber, which is the mixed liquor splitter chamber. So this is just going to help improve operations and performance at the plant. Then we've got some new components, and this is part of the wet weather flow and the diversion option that was presented previously, and that's tertiary filtration and UV disinfection. So this will be in place for all flows throughout the plant all year round, with the proposed wet weather flow approach being when the capacity of the bioreactors and the secondary clarifiers is exceeded, that excess flow will bypass the bioreactors and secondary clarifiers and be routed to the filter and UV disinfection. So delaying the need for future bioreactors and secondary clarifiers as part of the phase 4 upgrades, and kind of adding this improved level of treatment for year-round flows with the addition of the tertiary filter. With filtration and UV disinfection also comes the ability to really, maximize our use of reclaimed water on the site. And that's the little box in the bottom corner there, which is the reclaimed water pumping station. Finally, as part of the outfall condition assessment, we determined that the condition of the outfall is in decent condition, and are comfortable with doing a modest pressure increase to that pipe to buy some additional time before it needs replacement. So there's some planned upgrades to the effluent pump station, which is that blue box there, and the outfall chamber to buy us that additional pressure that's needed to increase the capacity of that pipe. Tying all this in together, is there some condition assessment equipment replacements, things that we saw as we went through this process that needed to be replaced, such as the generator is original and the septage receiving station is got some end-of-life equipment, and then some modifications to the odor control system to tie in all the new pieces that need odor control to our existing scrubber and carbon polisher. Any questions on this scope? I know we've seen it before, but it is a lot of things. No? Okay. Chris, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you, Zoe. And so you've also seen this slide before. This was presented in November as the current and future dollar value of each of the 4 phases that are outlined in the site master plan, starting with phase 4 completed by 2030, 100 million in today dollars, and 113 when it's escalated to the midpoint of construction. But what you haven't seen is the conversion of how those dollar values translate to estimated or approximate impacts per connection within the municipalities. So the 2 scenarios here are with and without the Strategic Priorities Fund grant that was applied for in September. So relatively modest in the scale of the project, but that $7 million grant could help to bring the cost down a bit. But without that grant, we're looking at total anticipated borrowing for the project of about $82 million, with a hefty or correspondingly hefty annual debt payment. And that works out to about $240 per property per year over the life of that amortization of that debt. And then the bottom row highlights that as from the start to end of that amortization period, the community is expected to grow significantly, and those additional connections help to drive that per connection cost down. So the highest cost will be felt by the users in the initial years, but as the community grows and those debt servicing costs are carried by a larger and larger number of homes and businesses in the community, those costs will come down as well. Those effective costs per connection. And just another note that these are estimates. They're based on effectively taking that total cost, annual cost, and dividing it by the estimated number of connections within the service area. Exactly how the costs are passed on to residents will differ a little bit between the 2 municipalities, but that's an approximate number. Before we proceed to the next slide, is there any comments or questions about these numbers, how we calculated them, assumptions, etc.? This is kind of the new piece of info that we're presenting today. And yeah, we're happy to take questions today, obviously, but also if you have a chance to sit on this and have any questions or comments to make, we can do that by email after the meeting as well. Okay. And one final piece that has been determined or confirmed since the last time we met is the selection of the procurement process. So we undertook a procurement options analysis as we have done for our other large capital projects over the last few years, the water treatment plant and then the conveyance project both went through a similar process to look at the various project attributes and help confirm the optimal delivery method from a largely from a cost and a risk perspective. So the different delivery methods have different risk and cost profiles. And in a nutshell, the procurement options analysis confirmed that our previous assumption that the project would be delivered via design bid build was sound. So now we're proceeding along that route. The alternative, which is how we delivered part of the conveyance project and the water treatment plant, which is a more progressive model, was seen as a little bit risky in terms of cost. Given the cost impact of this project on the community, our focus is on delivering it with maximum cost competition, which should help to minimize the project costs. And that last point there is just an aspect of that process is that we won't have pricing confirmed until the end of the tendering process for that project, and that's in comparison with other models that don't provide the same level of cost competition, but provide some cost certainty a little bit earlier on in the process. So maybe a bit of a nail biter, but we're confident through the due diligence that we've done that this process will deliver us the lowest cost impact to the community. On to the next piece here, unless there's any questions about that. So we also just wanted to provide an outline of the very large document that'll be coming your way in the springtime for review, which is the culmination of these years of work and engagement with you and with our consultants. So
Chris,
all of that work. Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but Ian has his hand up.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Allison. And hello, Chris. Hope all is well. One thing that has been going through my mind as I watch those cost estimates is that there's been a lot of detail there, and that staffing gets mentioned, but there doesn't seem to be any detail around how does this plan affect staffing, and and the work that might have gone into minimizing staffing increases. And what triggered me on that was the administrative building. I understand it's old and it needs refurbishment and those sorts of things anyways, but expansion for additional staff would say, hey, there's costs associated with that. So what work has been done around staffing levels and making sure that we've got maximum efficiencies like use of AI and all those sorts of things in keeping the costs down?
Yeah, that's a great question. Separate from this project, we have a lot of initiatives underway to help us evolve operationally through the use of asset management. There's a big push on at the CVRD right now to implement a robust asset management program, which has big implications for how we manage our assets for the sewer service and every other service. We also have work underway to evolve our operational processes and tie them more closely with best practice value chain work delivery. And then later this year, we plan to initiate our implementation of a computerized maintenance management system for the Comox Valley Sewer Service following the completion of implementation on the water service, which has been happening over the last few years. So we do have a lot of, and part of that, that's a product delivered by Esri, which is the same organization that handles all of our GS and most local government's GIS systems. But part of that evolving of that specific tool is the incorporation of AI. I think it's a little bit early yet to see how this rapid advancement of AI is going to impact us at the operational level, although we're definitely monitoring, attending conferences and monitoring industry publications to see how other organizations are successfully incorporating AI. But all that to say, there's a lot of work underway that's kind of outside of this project, which is to help us, do more with less or do more with the same in terms of resources. And then to the specific question about the extent to which this new infrastructure will increase the operational load at the facility. We are still working our way through that. We did provide some preliminary estimates earlier on in the planning process. But yes, incorporation of particularly the additional treatment processes that have come about through this planning process, so being the fabric filter and the UV, that could translate to an additional need for resources coinciding with the end of the project. But back to that, all that other parallel work that's underway, we're still working to see how those improvements will help to streamline our operations, and whether in fact we will need additional resources to help manage those additional processes. So that's to say we don't have a specific number to share with you today, but we're hopeful that the work we have underway will allow us to accommodate that infrastructure with minimal impact to additional resource requirements.
Thanks, Chris. Ian, does that answer your question?
It's a great answer for now, and I'll watch everything else and see if when we get to how this all rolls up with capital and operating costs, if it works for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. And
Yeah.
Shelley from Comox.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a quick question, Chris. So this is for phase 4, 113 million. Those are the cost per connection for the long term. I'm just looking at, let's just say 2050. So we're saying the range will be, well, between 220 to 150. But in the meantime, we also have then phase 4 and phase 5 that's going to also happen within that time frame for another $124 million. I'm assuming those costs would be on top of this?
Yeah, so phase 4 is the one that's shown here, and then 5, 6, and 7 will be delivered roughly 20, 40, 50, and 60. So depending on the precise scope, depending on the actual growth that we see in the community. But yes, certainly at least phases 5 and 6 will occur during the amortization period for this work. So these borrowing costs are just for phase 4. There will be cumulative impacts from phase 5 and 6 if growth occurs at the rate that we have projected it to. And so we're doing a lot of work right now in parallel with the financial planning process to model the kind of the impacts on the requisition over the coming decades as those cumulative impacts are felt. But the work that we've done to date indicates that the growth that requisitions that per connection costs are likely to peak around 2040, but then come down even despite those cumulative impacts as there's more and more connections and people to share in the cost of the service.
Great, thank you.
Shelley, any follow-up?
Nope, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions before we push on? These are great questions.
It's Jim Elliott here. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. I'm just
we can, Jim. Thank you.
Okay. I'm new to this whole Zoom thing, and I have a new tablet that's Android, so I'm learning. Anyway, you mentioned asset management, and I'm curious. There was a number of end-of-life equipment identified. Isn't there an existing asset management plan for that equipment replacement?
Yep. Yeah, there is. We've been kind of building an asset management program, kind of an Excel-based asset management program for the sewer service since about 2008, adding different components every few years, like pump stations and force mains and compost facility. And then in 2019, we worked with AECOM to develop an asset management, like a formal asset management plan for the service. But that was all done without kind of a corporate approach. It was also done without really, to be frank, much internal capacity in terms of awareness of asset management principles. So over the last few years, and particularly over the last 2, we've come a long way in terms of developing internal capacity training, and increased sophistication in those in our asset management planning. So some of those pieces that have been identified and included within the scope were flagged by that Excel-based asset management program. Others have just come about through those condition assessments that Zoe mentioned as being part of that work with Corolla over the last few months. So yeah, it's a combination of items that were identified in the plan previously and coincide with the delivery of the project, and then items that have been assessed through the work that Corolla has done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none. Chris, carry on.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the questions. I really appreciate the discussion. So yeah, this is just a single slide showing an outline of the LWMP Stage 3 report that is currently being drafted by our WSP team. And our purpose here is just to walk through it very briefly to give you a heads up on the approximate structure of the large deliverable that will be coming your way for review in April. And so this has been developed by the team building on other recently completed LWMPs, successfully approved LWMPs, and then incorporating the kind of our service specific items. For example, the sewer extension south and would be an example of a one that's specific to us. But so yeah, we got the introduction and background, so a summary of the process to date and the other stage report. Section 2 would be touching on stakeholder, right holder, and public consultation. So the summary of the stage 1 and 2 consultation that was attached to that earlier report, so you would have already seen. And then there'll be a summary of the stage 3 consultation that'll largely be happening over the coming months. And then a summary of the First Nations consultation. And then section 3 is plan area, land use, development, and population growth. So this is tying into those pieces that Zoe mentioned in terms of describing the community, where it's at now, how it's expected to grow, and the wastewater flows along with it, as well as the assessment of likely regulatory requirements and that connection piece to the EIS and the operational certificate that'll be coming as a result of this process. Section 4 summarizes the site master plan. 5 is the wastewater collection and conveyance, sewer extension south, so description of that process to date and where that one's at and how that will be incorporated into the process in the future. And then 6, it's kind of the meat of the new pieces that are being embedded in this process, partially as a result of the feedback that was provided by the province to our stage 1 and 2 report. So there'll be a section on the sewer extension south, the level of treatment at the treatment plant, what our plans are for the outfall, what elements of resource recovery we're incorporating, how we're working with our municipal partners to incorporate source control, as well as infiltration and inflow I&I. And for the I&I piece, so source control has already gone through municipal partners and been presented at previous TACPAC. The infiltration and inflow I&I is currently we've been working intensively with our municipal partners, and we'll be taking a report through the Sewage Commission next week. And then embedding those commitments that come out of that process into the draft plan that you'll see in a couple months. And then finally, how we are working to incorporate climate change mitigation and adaptation into the process. And then the 7th section is the implementation plan. So the schedule of works and the cost estimates, the details regarding cost per user, details on how we plan to honor or comply with the requirements for a plan monitoring committee, and then what process and timeline there will be for reviewing the plan and amending it in the future, in approximately that 10-year time frame. And then, so this is just the body of the report. There will be a large number of attachments and appendices that will also be attached to support many of these items. Any comments or questions on that before we move on? Okay. So yeah, next steps. So as I mentioned, the next few months are very busy. We have set the target of completing this process and submitting that plan by this summer, both to ensure that we can get started on the upgrades the necessary upgrades at the facility as soon as possible, but also to have this process completed in advance of the next political cycle, so that those that have been engaged can finish this process. And so next March, starting with next month, March, we have a public open house planned on March 3rd at the treatment plant. So in the past, we've had good response from the public when an opportunity to engage has been combined with a tour of the facility. So we're hoping that happens this time as well, that we get some good interest and people to come and participate in that event. And that'll be focused on the site master plan and the cost impacts of the upgrades. We'll also be continuing our engagement with the KFN and other First Nations. And then in April, we plan to have the draft stage 3 plan complete and ready for circulating to this group via email for review and comment. So that's an email review. And then another public open house reviewing the draft stage 3 plan, or key elements of it. Obviously, it'll be a very large document. So in that public open house, we'll be focusing in on the pieces that of relevance to the community, of direct relevance. And then we'll be initiating, once that's complete, we'll be initiating the formal 90-day review period for First Nation engagement on the draft plan. In May, we will be incorporating the comments from the public, the TACPAC, and any early feedback from First Nations into the final stage 3 LWMP. And then we'll be meeting, and then we'll be circulating it to this group, and then meeting for the last time as part of this process. So TACPAC meeting 16 later that month, in advance of bringing incorporating that feedback and then bringing the final stage 3 plan to the commission in June for their review and approval, which will be the final contact point for the commission in advance of submission to the province, assuming there's no material comments that come in from the First Nations review. That won't be completed until about midsummer.
Chris,
so just to
Chris,
yep.
just one question, if you can just go back to that last stage.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, how long do you think, once you've submitted the plan to the ministry, how long will it take them to get to their approval point?
Your best guess is between 6 to 12 months. So just based on what they've been telling us and what other jurisdictions have experienced. So yeah, it'd be great to be closer to the 6 months, but we're expecting likely closer to 12. So that's what we're counting on in our scheduling of procurement and the other pieces, delivery. Yeah.
Thanks. Any questions about this slide or the process going forward? Awesome. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, this slide just focuses in on elaborates on the 2 contact points with this committee. So in April, we will be circulating the draft LWMP to the TACPAC for an opportunity to review and provide some preliminary feedback, which we could then incorporate before it's brought to the final meeting, where we have a chance to walk through it in detail and discuss in detail with this group. And then the other piece that will be discussed at that final in-person meeting likely in May, will be establishment of the plan monitoring committee. So we're still in the kind of early phases of kind of thinking about what that could look like. But one of the options is to work with this group to evolve the technical and public advisory committee to bring the members that make sense for ongoing participation into a plan monitoring advisory committee that would then be in place for the duration of this plan. So yeah, we're working on that, and we'll bring forward some options for discussion at that next meeting. And then finally, just looking out beyond the submission of the Stage 3 LWMP. So the summer and fall, we will be, so in parallel with the LWMP process, working on the operational certificate application, which should be submitted around that same time. And then we'll be continuing design of the phase 4 upgrades. So detailed design, our intention is to have the detailed design complete and waiting by the earliest point at which we could receive approval from the province for proceeding, so that we can hit the ground running and essentially initiate procurement as soon as that approval is received. So yeah, fall 26, and then all the way through to summer and fall 27, review of the Stage 3 report and the operational certificate by the ministry, and hopefully approval of such by the end of 27. And then right now, if all of that goes according to plan, then we'd be looking at construction of the phase 4 upgrade starting in, it says 27, but like that would be procurement, but construction itself, at some point in 2028, and completion before or by 2030. I believe that's it for our presentation. Yeah, so turn it back to the group and see if there's any comments or questions or discussion items that we should look at today before we sign off.
Thanks, Chris. Just, it's a daunting process. I think thank you to all the members of this committee who have been in this from the beginning. It's been, from my point of view, a remarkable process to watch and to watch the staff so diligently, doggedly working on this and dodging and weaving as the circumstances have changed. So yeah, really big thanks to all the staff and to all the committee members. Any questions about where we're headed? Lindsay, I see your...
I was just clapping.
Oh, okay.
Seeing on the timeline for the submission of a liquid waste management plan is something that I needed to clap about. Well done.
Yeah, really kudos to everybody involved. I think my one request or one question is, do you have any sense, given that this is going to be the final 16th and final meeting of TACPAC, any chance we can have a sense of a date? Is there any chance you might put up a couple of proposed dates that we could all pencil into our calendars? Because I think everybody would like to be there and to be a part of that final meeting. So I think the longer the lead time, the better.
Yeah, so I agreed and understood. I don't have any specific dates for you now, other than to say that we're hoping it takes place in May, but definitely point taken, and we will work to get as much notice as possible, and if possible, provide some options to make sure we maximize attendance.
Yeah, and maybe one way to think of this is to schedule a date or two, and I assume people would understand if that doesn't work out, and we can reschedule. But it probably would be best for everybody. Ian?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ian, you're muted. Your hand's up.
My
There you go.
my fat thumb couldn't find the button. I was just wondering if there's any update whatsoever on the sewer extension south funding decisions,
Great question.
progress.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work underway right now. I think we likely have an update report coming through the AESC over the next month or two. That's all I can say right now. Although I do see Derry on the line. Derry, are you able to provide any more details on that? I'm not sure Derry's. Oh,
sorry, there I was also trying to find my my unmute button. But yeah, thanks for the question, Ian. I understand it has been a long time since we provided an update on the project to this committee. Like Chris said, we are still working in the background, looking at available kind of funding, phasing, and scope options for the project, and we do anticipate an update coming forward in the next couple months, and certainly ahead of our May meeting, where we'll be able to provide hopefully a more fulsome update to the committee.
That would be great.
And I guess one follow-up to that would be, is there any update on the debate that's been going on around connection charges and whether they'd be frozen for the sewer extension south?
So yeah, that ball's in our court. So the commission directed us to refer the topic to municipal councils. Prior to doing so, we've just been updating our financial analysis, and that's nearing completion. So we expect to have that referral out to the municipal councils by the end of this month, which should hopefully allow us to be following up to those conversations at council with a sewage commission agenda item in April or May.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any final thoughts, Chris?
No, just to echo your comments there, Alison. A big thank you to everybody for their diligence and staying power as we've navigated this process. It's incredible to think of how long it's been since we initiated in June of 2018, and many of you have been involved since then. So yeah, as we get close to our last meeting, I just also wanted to say a really big thank you for everybody for their participation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. And I'm not looking forward to the last meeting because I think I'll miss you all, but it will be great to see this move forward. So yeah, thanks to everybody, and look forward to seeing you in May. Maybe a motion to adjourn if we could.
So moved, Mary.
Thanks, Mary. Seconded by Ian. Will you second that for us?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm just assuming you're all in favor. Anybody opposed? If not, good, carried. And I really look forward to seeing you all in May and the next step. So thanks all for joining us, and good luck with this next phase of the work to all the staff.
Thank you, Alison.
Everybody.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.